Hi, I'm Naomi Fox, Director of Education at ANPD.
Hi, and I'm Leslie Wright-Brown, one of the members of the original Diversity Task Force that was commissioned in 2017.
And we're here today to talk about the Diversity and Inclusion Survey results.
So just to give you a background as to where this all began, kind of our origins, and then moving to where we are today. So the original task force was commissioned in 2017. A call was put out by ANPD to look for volunteers who were interested in starting to explore diversity, equity, and inclusion within the organization. At that juncture, we developed 4 mini task forces, I should say subcommittees within our task force that started to look at areas such as underrepresented groups in ANPD, looking at different service settings outside of the acute care setting. A group was also formed to look at also implicit bias in nursing. Our initial charge was to develop a position paper that was published by ANPD, kind of summarizing all of the results of these subcommittees. Moving fast forward, after the charge of these 4 subcommittees, it became evident to the team that we really never had initial demographic information for all of our membership. So it was in October of 2020 that we began looking at developing a demographic survey. But in addition to that, the task force also wanted to ascertain from the membership kind of their perspectives on diversity, equity, and inclusion within ANPD, looking at our commitment to it and how we could advance that charge.
This was a volunteer survey communicated to membership via email for participation, and it was designed to collect relevant demographic information, as Leslie said, to evaluate diversity and inclusion efforts at the organizational level and provide external benchmarking on institutional engagement. We're going to go into the demographics first. So the results indicated that 467 people completed the survey. Leslie, do you mind just providing what the industry standard is for survey?
In the research world, it's considered a reputable response rate of about 21%. Even though that might seem small, that is the kind of the expected standard for surveys that are distributed in nursing.
Yeah, so, and I know that a lot of us have a lot of survey overload, especially through email. So in the future, if we decide to resurvey, we're going to brainstorm on other ways that we can do this. A membership at the time of October 2022 was about 7,200 members. And so 467 folks are about 0.6% response rate. We did get support to get some statistical analysis on our data, but this is pretty much just the very simple SurveyMonkey demographics at this point. So as you can see, for age-wise, 8.8% were 65 plus, 64 to 55 years of age were 30%, 45 to 54 years of age were 26.9%, 35 to 44 were 26.3%, and 25 to 34 were 7.8%. Gender-wise, 0.6% indicated gender queer, gender fluid, or non-binary, 96.1% responded female, 2.6% male, and 0.6% prefer to self-describe. So as I'm explaining the demographics and as Leslie's going to explain the responses to the questions, what I want you all to keep in mind is for statistical analysis, we had to group any numbers that were small in order to compare them to the larger majority number. So for statistical analysis, age was able to be tested in each category because the percentages of folks that indicated they were a specific age were high enough. For statistical analysis for gender category, we were only able to be tested in female versus male because of the percentage of N, or female versus non-female responses. 19.6% of the participants ethnically identified another option than white, and white indicated 80.4% of the responses. The US Census in 2020 indicates that 57.8% white non-Hispanic people reside in the United States. And of the 10 point, we also asked if you speak a primary language other than English, and 5.8% and plus 4.5% indicated that they speak another language other than English. And this was very interesting results, because if some examples of some of the languages that were reported were Hindi, Arabic, Spanish, French, Tagalog, Vietnamese, and so many languages. And it was really beautiful to see. We asked about the religious or spiritual affiliation of the respondents. 71.8% were Christian, with the second highest being 9.5% agnostic, and the third highest being 7.9% other. We asked about any sort of disability. 95 people answered this question, that's the N, with the highest percentage indicating attention deficit disorder. And this included health-related disabilities or any type of disabilities, and these were all used with prior best language practice. We asked if you were a member of the US military. 91.7% indicated no, and some other options were if you were a member yourself or had a primary person in your household that was a member. And then we also were interested in whether you are a primary caregiver, either to a child or a family member that lives with you or a loved one that lives with you. And 37.6% indicated yes. We had a lot of caregivers here. 24.5% indicated no, and 2.0% indicated other. Additional data points that we collected, but we did not use for any statistical analysis, where we were curious about the state of residence, because we were hoping to get a broad range of respondents, the highest educational degree, years of nursing professional development experience, and years of nursing professional development membership.
So now we're going to move into the question portion of the survey. So question number 33, as stated, ANPD effectively promotes diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging amongst members and within the organization. You'll see that for the questions, a Likert scale was used. So it went anywhere from strongly agree to strongly disagree. Also, there was a selection for I don't know. You're neither agree nor disagree indicated individuals were kind of on the fence. So sometimes they might agree and sometimes they may disagree. Overall, when we looked at 3 demographic variables, ethnicity, foreign language, and disability, or someone referring to someone who is uniquely abled. For this particular question and for other questions subsequently that we'll go through in explaining the survey, whites were more likely to strongly agree or agree with this statement. In regards to individuals who speak other than English, only those individuals with whom English was their primary language, they were also more likely to agree or strongly agree with this statement. And amongst those who identify with any type of psychosocial or health type disability or being uniquely abled, they were also more likely to strongly agree or agree with the fact that ANPD does promote DE&I belonging in the organization amongst its members. You'll see on the breakdown on the left, again, just supporting, you'll see strongly agree and agree really looks like at least over 60% of the members. And again, who those members were are the demographics that I just went through. Also, you'll notice that if you look at neither agree nor disagree, so there was a fair number of people, close to 10%, whom, as I mentioned, when you look at that category, they're on the fence. And then the other interesting fact was when you look at I don't know, so again, a solid 10%. So there are people who really didn't feel comfortable asking the question at all because they're really not sure. There were also some demographics when the statistician actually did a statistical analysis where he saw no statistical significance in relation to gender, in relation to age, in relation to religion, with one exception, and that's question number 33. And I'll be going through those questions. There was no statistical significance related to caregiver status. Or lastly, military status, again, with the exception of one question, question number 28. Now I'm just going to go through the questions on the survey. So question number 24, ANPD demonstrates a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion in the organization. ANPD incorporates diversity, equity, and inclusion into public policy advocacy and demonstrates a commitment to work with external partners. ANPD rewards or recognizes members who are leading or promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion work in the profession. So for race and ethnicity, for questions 24 to 26, there was a highly significant difference in agreement between whites versus other ethnic groups. Whites were more likely to strongly agree with with these particular questions, 24 to 26. In regards to foreign language, for question 24, there were significant differences in agreement between those who were English speakers, primarily English speakers versus non-English speakers. Those in whom English was their primary language were more likely to strongly agree with this particular statement. When you look at age as a demographic variable, age has a significant difference in question number 26 with no conclusions to draw. Basically, that equates to there really was no statistical significance we found with age in regards to ANPD rewarding or recognizing members who are leading or promoting DE&I, E&I work in the profession. And then in regards to disability status or anyone who is uniquely abled, when we look at questions 23 to 26, there was a significant difference in agreement. Those who identified with that particular variable, being uniquely abled or disabled, were more likely to strongly agree with that particular, with questions 23 to 26. 28 and 29. 28, I feel included in all ANPD events I attend and or participate in. ANPD makes me feel like I belong to the profession and the organization. And for question 29, ANPD provides sufficient professional development, learning opportunities, and or resources that help me incorporate principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion into my work. When we looked at, again, age as a demographic variable, we just saw that there were significant differences in responses for question number 29. For questions 28 and 29, for race or ethnicity, there were statistically significant differences in responses between those whom were non-whites versus those who identified as white. Those who identified as white were more likely to strongly agree with questions number 28 and 29. When we looked at foreign language or those whom English was not their primary language, for those who were primarily English speakers, they would be more likely to agree with these particular questions. Again, we look at disability status for questions 28 and 29. Those who identified as being uniquely abled or disabled were more likely to strongly agree with these particular questions. And then lastly, when we looked at military status, there was no statistically significant difference for military status, meaning there was really, because there was no statistical significance, it really was not a significant or key variable in regards to the responses that we saw in the survey. And then we'll go, as we look at questions 31 to 35. So 31, I'm aware of the steps ANPD is doing to increase DE&I in the profession. And 32, ANPD is supportive of different ideas, cultural viewpoints, identities, including my own. Question 33, I feel free to express alternative views or opinions that differ from the norm when interacting with other ANPD members. And question 34, I'm confident in my ability to work with and advocate for patients working with and advocating for the LGBTQIA+ community. And lastly, I'm confident in my ability to work with or advocate for patients of a different race, ethnicity, or culture other than my own. So again, we'll look at the correlation with some of the demographic variables. So you'll see for age has a statistically significant difference. Age did not have a statistically significant difference for question 31. So age was not a variable in regards to someone feeling that ANPD is taking steps to promote DE&I in the profession. When we look at questions 31 to 33 and looking at the demographics of race and ethnicity, non-whites are less aware of the steps taken in question 31 to increase DE&I within the profession. They believe ANPD is less supportive. Again, these are individuals who identify as non-white, and they believe that they are less free to express any alternate views. So in general, non-whites may feel as though they can't truly bring their authentic self, if you will, within an ANPD setting. Again, those in whom English was not their primary language, for question number 35, comfort level being an advocate for individuals of a different race, ethnicity, or culture than my own, there was a significant difference in agreement. For those whom are non-English speakers, they are more likely to be confident in their ability to work with different cultures. And then for question number 33, in regards to the demographic of religion, there were no statistically significant differences found based on religion for any of the responses to these questions. Question number 27, ANPD effectively cultivates an inclusive environment for members regardless of and not limited to, and you'll see the various demographic variables here: ethnicity, gender, age, sexual orientation, disability status, veteran status, socioeconomic status, country of origin. We have language, culture, religion, spirituality, health history, legal status, and geographic region. In this particular category, race, there were statistically significant differences in every category, with whites more likely to agree and strongly agree with this particular statement. Again, for those whom English was not their primary language, they were more likely to agree with this particular statement. Disability status, again, we saw that those who identified with this particular demographic were more likely to strongly agree with this statement. In question 30, I feel confident in my understanding of each of the following concepts. Check all that apply. And basically, individuals, or for topics in which respondents indicated they were not very confident, those items are highlighted. And those items are: members were not that comfortable with allyship or the concept of allyship, being an active bystander or upstander, cultural humility, anti-racism, and microaggressions. So this was somewhat of a mini learning needs assessment, and it identified for us opportunities for the task force and for the organization to provide additional resources and education for the membership. Has ANPD done enough to promote diversity, equity, inclusion, and a sense of belonging in the organization? So on a scale of 1 to 5, basically our average rating was about 3.8, which is probably moving towards agree, not quite strongly agree. Question 37, which of the following resources and/or supports would be helpful to you in incorporating diversity, equity, and inclusion into your work? And again, this was one of those questions where you could have multiple responses. The top responses in regards to resources that the respondents were looking for: specific tools and materials to implement. So very nitty-gritty, down to earth, give me some tools in order to execute this work. Training and professional development, and advocacy for public policy into ANPD. So how do we as nursing professional development specialists advocate in that public policy sector for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
So we wanted to take the responses from the survey and really dig deep and identify what opportunities do we have, both in the short term and in the long term, because this is certainly an extremely important topic that is not a check the box. We feel very passionately about, taking the responses, making some actionable items and steps available to our members and our community that we serve, and then, reevaluating it in the future. So because Leslie mentioned that we had a decent, in one question, we showed you an example how we saw the data and there was 10% of I don't knows. That was a trend throughout almost majority of the questions. So because there was a lot of I don't knows, that tells us that we need to communicate better about what ANPD is doing for DEI. So this is an example of one of the ways that we're going to communicate better. We want to put this through NPD in motion. We're going to use our marketing platforms to let our members and community and nursing community know nationally, what we're doing and how we're going to respond to the survey. The task force will also continue to work on a charge to identify concrete strategies to implement and improve non-white member experiences with DE&I and ANPD. So this was the second visual here. This includes any educational opportunities that we can put out through our webinars, through utilizing any resources that we intend to build on our website, have a DE&I section through NPD in motion. The task force has discussed, and we're trying to plan to operationalize that anyone is invited to contribute to. So examples can be how you implement DE&I into your work, how you lead DE&I initiatives, and how the community that you serve has improved from DE&I initiatives. So we already have a couple of topics mapped out for 2023 webinars that will address different strategies with DE&I and social determinants of health. And then finally, education on the least identified topics of confidence of members. That easy learning needs assessment question pointed us right in the direction that we need to see allyship, active bystander, upstander, cultural humility, anti-racism, microaggressions, and try to develop specific tools and materials to implement in your own practice immediately so that you have the resources that you need to be able to take this into your own practice, training, and any advocacy and public policy into nursing professional development. We had a section where we wanted to know about if any of the respondents for the DE&I survey did volunteer with ANPD or have wanted to volunteer with ANPD. So we asked these questions and there was some free text comments. I volunteered but was not asked to join the committee or area. This is a very big dissatisfier for me. I submitted a volunteer form but only received one message back that I wasn't selected for the role, and I did not hear back. Question 20 asked if in the last 2 years, have you applied for volunteer opportunities or role and you were not selected for, and 13.4% responded yes. And any perceived barriers to volunteering, and the responses were work responsibilities, personal responsibilities, lack of awareness of opportunities, or never been asked. So we're truly committed to improving our response rate for anyone who has not selected after submitting interest and updating any rubric process for selection, as well as sharing any needs that or requirements that are expected in advance to improve transparency for anyone interested in volunteering for any opportunity. And when you're thinking about volunteering, we're actually come out with our call for volunteers within the next few months. I'm talking about being a member on a task force, being a content matter expert, being a subject matter expert, being a mentor for one of our academies. You're contributing to any of our published materials in any capacity, sharing with the community your best practice that you're doing and sharing with us so we can all learn together. We're recognizing that experts on a subject can be novice or competent NPD practitioners. Not everyone has to be an expert. You may be an expert in an area, but not an expert by textbook definition in NPD. We hope this will increase a diverse pool of content experts. And also we're looking at a tiered approach for volunteering to identify entry opportunities related to question 22, so that if your other responsibilities in your life don't allow you to commit a potential X amount of hours as a volunteer, we're looking at adapting some sort of tiered approach so that you can still volunteer in the capacity that best works for you to increase engagement from all our members. So our next steps, as we are disseminating our survey member results to the task force and to our community and to our members, the task force is now collaborating for opportunities in the next course of action. And then we're going to disseminate, and this is where we are now, disseminating our member survey results to members, and also with an accompanied article in NPD in motion. And we only had 432 responses, but we really hope that we connect with all of our 7,000 plus members and all of our 15,000 plus community on our listserv, and that you take into consideration our results and what our intentions are for next steps. And I did want to share that as a result of really advocating for diversity, equity, and inclusion, the task force has been officially made a full-blown committee for ANPD. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, and we will also be recruiting members onto the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. So Leslie, did you have any final thoughts or comments for this?
Just as it's an exciting time to watch the Diversity Task Force to escalate to a level of an official committee at ANPD. Really demonstrates ANPD's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I really look forward, along with other members of the task force, for our next journey in regards to this space.
Leslie, thank you so much for joining me and presenting these results. You are an incredible mentor to me, and I'm just extremely honored to work on this with you. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you.